I'm Serena Williams, and I'm healthier on Ro. I've lost 34 pounds in a year with GLP-1s, diet, and exercise. On Ro, you can access GLP-1 options, including the first FDA-approved GLP-1 pill for weight loss. Go to ro.co/journey to see if you qualify. 14 to 20% average weight loss in 1 year in non-diabetics with obesity or overweight with a weight-related medical condition versus 2.2% to 3.1% in placebo arm. RX only. To stay informed about serious side effects, go to ro.co/safety.
Hey there, island dreamers, locals, and anyone craving a slice of paradise. Welcome back, or welcome for the first time, to the Fun in Key West podcast, where the vibe is always laid back, the stories are salty, and the drinks, well, they're definitely frozen. I'm your host, Michelle O'Connor, your unofficial tour guide to the Conch Republic. Whether you're planning your first trip, your fifth trip, or you're just daydreaming about trading the cubicle for the ocean breeze, you are in the right place. Here's the deal. This podcast is your insider's guide to all things Key West. We're talking where to eat, hello, conch fritters and key lime pie, where to drink, spoiler alert, there will be rum, where to stay, and all the quirky, wonderful things that make Key West the one-of-a-kind paradise we all love. Plus, we'll keep you up to date on the latest happenings, festivals, events, maybe even the occasional Hemingway lookalike sighting. And just to keep things spicy, we'll be bringing on some amazing guests now and then, locals, business owners, and people who know the island like the back of their sandy hand. So grab your flip-flops, pour yourself a cold one, and let's escape to the island state of mind together, whether you're tuning in from your hammock or your commute, while wishing it was a hammock. We've got all the Key West goodness coming your way. Thanks for being here. It's going to be a lot of fun in Key West. Let's dive in.
Well, let's be honest. Sometimes you just want to melt into the couch after a long day without pouring a glass of wine and ruining tomorrow morning. Enter Kava. Today, I am sitting down with Morgan Smith, the CEO of Kalm with Kava, to talk about this wild 3,000-year-old South Pacific tradition. We're digging into how this root tea actually numbs your mouth, yes, on purpose, and gives you all the chill, euphoric vibes of a happy hour cocktail, totally without the hangover or even those questionable life choices. Let's get into it.
Welcome to Fun in Key West, where every day feels like a mini fest. Grab a drink, take it slow. We'll show you where the locals go. Food, fun, and stories to tell. Hidden gems you know so well. Your Key West experts here to say it's fun in Key West every day.
Welcome to the Fun in Key West podcast. I am so glad that you are joining us today. Today is a little bit different. We are going to learn about something that I honestly knew nothing about. But Morgan Smith is the CEO of Kalm with Kava, and he reached out and said, hey, you need to learn about Kava. And I thought, you know what? I thought you guys would too. So like I said, he is the CEO of Kalm with Kava, which is a company that's been helping people learn about and enjoy Kava for many years. If you've never heard of the word Kava and thought, wait, what exactly is that? Well, you're absolutely not alone, because that's basically where I'm starting too. Morgan works in the world of Kava every day, from product development to relationships with growers in the South Pacific. And what I found really interesting is that this isn't just about selling a product. There's history here, there's culture here, and a whole lot more than I realized when I first started looking into it. So today we're going to get into what Kava actually is, what it feels like, how it's different from other things like alcohol, CBD, weed, and what beginners should know before trying it, and why it's sourced, it matters so much. And I really thought that you all would love to be able to hear this and learn about it, because you're going to see these places all over, and they are in Key West. So I thought, you know what? Nothing better than to bring on Morgan to tell us all about this. So welcome to the show, Morgan.
Yeah, thank you so much. I thought that like when I first reached out to you, I thought, okay, well, Florida is kind of the mecca of kava bars, which many people throughout the U.S. haven't seen a kava bar or heard about a kava bar, but Florida has tons of kava bars, and so I thought that it kind of makes a little bit of sense for us to talk about it. I don't own any kava bars. I don't live in Florida, but I do know a lot about kava, and I know a lot about that product, right? So if someone sees a kava bar as they're driving by, if they're visiting Key West and they think that they might want to try something that's a little bit different, something that's not alcoholic. I know that as we get older, or as kind of lifestyle changes happen, we don't really want to always be drinking alcohol, and so kava is a great alternative for someone like that.
I agree. So before we get into kava and all what it's about, how did you end up in this world to begin with?
Yeah, so about 12 years ago, I was in a really funky place in my life where I had a young family. I had two kids and a beautiful wife, and I was just in the throes of life. And we were dealing with all sorts of problems that everyone deals with, right? And I went to my doctor and I said, hey, I need some help. I need something to help me kind of chill out. And so I was prescribed some benzodiazepines, like a Klonopin, and I was also prescribed some SSRIs. And I took the SSRIs, and then they said, okay, well, if you ever have like a panic attack, you can go ahead and take a benzo, and it'll help you just kind of take it down a notch. Well, I took that benzodiazepine while I was at the office, and I don't remember what I did the rest of the day.
Oh.
I kind of blacked out, and I was taking coworkers to lunch, and I was making decisions that I probably should not have been making while I was on that stuff. And I came to a couple hours later after having driven myself home and realizing that had I been on that while, let's say, my newborn son needed to go to the hospital, that would have been a big problem, right?
Yeah.
I should not have been making decisions while I was out of my mind, right? And so I needed to find an alternative. And so I looked for, I don't know, I looked for probably a solid 6 to 8 months. I tried 15 different things to try to find something that really worked for me in my life. And Kava was the one thing I tried where I could really feel it psychoactively. And I also knew that it wasn't going to get me hooked, right? So I was raised in a very religious environment growing up, and I knew that from a very early age, I didn't want to get addicted to something. I don't want to be like a zombie. I don't want to have to like depend on something to exist. And kava does not have any sort of physically addictive properties to it. So it's very nice to have something that'll help you kind of chill out and relax without having long-term problems like you would expect from basically anything else, right? Like all of our uncles, they're always reaching for the bottle of whiskey, and our cousin is reaching for the weed, and everyone is and like some people are going to the doctor and they're getting stuff, prescriptions that they have to be on for forever, and it's just not for me. I just don't want to be beholden to a substance, and so that's what kava gives me.
So did that then direct you into what you're doing today because of that journey and learning about kava?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it absolutely. So once I found that kava from, trying 15 different things, it became a part of my lifestyle, right? It became something like, okay, well, tonight, instead of, taking some medicine or whatever it might be, kava became the thing that I was using to relax. And it's what I continue to use today, right? So I started out a little kava company way back when, and I was busy in the technology world. I was in financial payments, and it was a lot of stress as well. And it was just, but it was something where like it was a good career. And so the Kava company kind of took off, and I couldn't handle it. So I sold it to a good buddy of mine. Actually, here's a picture of him. His name is Mike Munsell. And Mike was, he was like my Kava guru. He was the guy who I always went to for Kava advice. And he owned Kalm Kava, the company that I currently own. And Mike also had planted a small patch of Kava in Hawaii, that's where he is in this picture, where he's planting his own Kava plants there. And in 2020, he passed away. And I was huge friends with Mike. He would always come down to Phoenix, and I was, he was up in Montana, and he would come down and hang out with me. And his wife was great friends with my wife. We would always go out to dinner, or Mike and I would stay in and watch the kids and drink some kava while the ladies went out and had dinner. And unfortunately, his wife has a chronic health issue, and she could not handle dealing with the company. And so she said, "Hey, I got to shut this down." And I said, "No, you're not," because it concerned me. I thought, well, like Mike already died, and that, took a whole lot of my heart. And I felt like if his company died, then he really would die.
Yeah.
And so I decided to start running it, and I bought it from her. And now from his 100 plants that he had in Hawaii, we now have about 15,000 plants. Wow. So everything that we're doing is kind of, with Mike in mind.
That's awesome. And it sounds like this is more than just, we're going to help cure, or not necessarily cure, but I found something that worked for me. I want to spread the message, but it's also that personal attachment, that love of what this does. And if you hadn't picked it up, there would be people out there who wouldn't be able to get access to Kava like you have. And so this business idea has really taken off, I think, since you've taken it over. Like you said, you've grown from, up to 15,000 plants, and it started with that real world need that you needed something other than something that you could be addicted to, or alcohol and all of that. So those normal things that we have a tendency to turn to when we want to unwind or try to deal with the stress of the day. So before we get too far in this, I think people are starting to wonder, what exactly is Kava? So for someone who has never heard of it before, how do you explain what it is?
Yeah, so it is a plant that's been grown throughout Polynesia and Melanesia and Micronesia, which is the South Pacific Islands. Think like Fiji or Hawaii. It started in a little archipelago a couple hundred miles west of Fiji called Vanuatu. And they take cuttings of this plant. It was a wild plant originally, and they would plant it, and then they would like the effects of one plant versus another, and they would take the plant that they liked, and they would take a cutting of that, and they would keep doing that over and over again. And it was a canoe plant, and so it morphed as it went along, across the islands, and it was very important to these people, right? Kava, it helps produce effects in your brain. It creates euphoria. It also creates sedation, and it helps you really connect with one another. And so it's really good for relationships. I look at it kind of like a Polynesian peace pipe. It's something that people can consume and really have a good connection with one another. You want to do a business deal with the guy next door, you go drink Kava with him. You want to go marry the girl next door, you go drink Kava with her dad. You want to go, amend a relationship, you go drink Kava together, and you hash out your problems. And today in the Western world, a lot of people are using Kava as similar kind of ways. It's just ways to wind down at the end of the day without like having the next day hangovers or something like that. And so this plant, it requires humans to actually propagate it. So it has cuttings, and those cuttings would die without humans. It does not propagate itself. It has flowers, but it doesn't have any seeds. And so when I say that Mike had 100 plants, I literally mean without Mike, those 100 plants wouldn't exist. And without me, I could not propagate his plants into 15,000 plants.
Wow. So it's a plant, but do you drink it? Is it a supplement? Where does it fit into the process of consuming it?
Yeah, so technically it is, the FDA considers it a food or a supplement. It is a drink. When we talk about Kava, it's kind of like coffee, right? The coffee plant exists, but the coffee drink also exists, right? And so Kava has similar kind of thing. You take the root of the Kava plant and you grind it up, and then you mix it with water and make kind of like a tea out of it. So it is a drink.
Okay. What do people usually assume when they hear about this that's wrong? I mean, what assumptions do they bring into this thought process?
So a lot of people are conflating Kava with other things that are addictive. And so that's a problem, because Kava is not addictive. A lot of manufacturers out there are mixing it with things like kratom, which are addictive. They have, operates off of opioid agonists. And that's an issue for me personally, because I look at it and I go, well, kava is a very safe, benign substance. And when you're mixing it with something like that, you could end up, having someone get hooked on something that they should not, or did not realize that they were going to get hooked on. So that's a problem, and misunderstanding. Another thing is sometimes you'll see that it has liver issues associated with it. That is completely unfounded. About 20 years ago, there was a German pharmaceutical company that bought kava from one island in Vanuatu, from one farm. They extracted it, and then it got some people sick in Germany.
Oh,
That hasn't happened yet, or since for the last 20, 25 years. So it was one company out of Europe that created all these big scares that you read about over and over again today.
wow. So if you're watching us live and have any questions for Morgan, drop them in the chat and we'll see what we can do about answering those. So we've talked about what it is. Now the big question is, and I'm sure a lot of people watching are saying, so if it's not addictive and it's not like alcohol and it's not like anything else, what does it feel like when you actually use it?
Yeah, so the first thing that someone will notice is that their mouth will get numb, their tongue will get numb, and it's because of a compound in it called kavain. Kava has 6 major kava lactones, which are the active ingredients of kava that make you feel something. And kavain, if you think of when you go to the dentist and you have Novocaine, well, kavain has those similar properties. It makes your mouth feel numb. But that's also one of the primary compounds that creates euphoria in your head. And so you feel a little bit of a kind of a spaciness, a little bit of a just kind of a gentle relaxation, but nothing super intense. You're not going to feel like you're on the ceiling. You're not going to feel like you're in space. You're not going to make any bad decisions. You're still going to have your mind. You're still going to be able to actually operate throughout the day. And it also has another kavalactone called dihydromethicillin, which is kind of the counterbalance of kavain. It's the sedative it's the sedative ingredient there, and that will help you really melt into the couch. It's also an anti-inflammatory and muscle relaxant. And so different kavas have different ratios of kavain to dihydromethicillin. So depending on the type that you want, some might be more euphoric and some might be more sedative. And that's kind of the general rule is well, what do you want out of this? And, buy the type of kava that you would want out of it.
That makes a lot of sense. So when you try kava for the first time, you can expect then the feelings of euphoria and the numbness, or is there something else that people should brace themselves for or not? So what's a first timer going to expect?
Yeah, so first timers, they're going to feel that numbness and they're also going to feel relaxed. They're going to kind of sink into the couch a little bit more. They will feel something up in their head. They're going to go oh, okay, all right, we're just kind of chilling out a little bit, and we're it's a good time, right? I always tell people that my favorite thing to do is, especially if you're drinking kava for the first time, is drink it with someone else, because it's a great icebreaker. It's a great way to have people talk about their shared experience. Oh, why are we drinking this muddy medicinal dirt water that doesn't taste very good? Well, it's because it feels nice, and it's nice to have conversations with it.
Oh. So if I'm trying it for the first time, I'm going to have a lot of that. Is there a dosage that you start with? Do you go in gradually? Do you add it to something else so it doesn't have a taste? What's the recommendation?
So normally when you prepare kava, you'll take the kava, you'll throw it into a strainer bag, and you will massage that bag in a bowl of water. And you do that so that you can create a decent amount of it. And then you drink it at a half cup a time. And we always call it a shell because they drink it out of coconut shells. So it's literally like you're drinking a half shell of coconut of kava. And so, I'll have normally 4 or 5 shells in an evening.
Mm-hmm.
And that way I can kind of also control the effects. So if I take it and I go, okay, it's kind of like coffee again, right? In the morning, if you have a cup of coffee and you're still tired, you just go for another cup of coffee, right? And it's the same thing with kava. You just have another shell of kava.
Oh, okay. I had this on earlier, but yeah, Noni's saying hi, so we're going to say hi.
Hey, Noni.
So So I think that's really helpful because I think people, as they start into something new, they want to know what to expect, how, what that's going to feel like. But I think they're also trying to figure out where this fits, which brings us to the question that everybody's going to ask is, how is this different from alcohol? And I think you've sort of given some idea of how it's different from alcohol or CBD or weed. But what other aspects is Kava different?
Well, Kava doesn't make you regret your life decisions. Uh, Kava doesn't ruin your evening.
Uh-huh.
It doesn't ruin your morning. Uh, Kava doesn't, create lifelong dependency. It doesn't have all of those problems that you associate with your drunk uncle. So I think that that's kind of the general rule of things. I also would say that for years and years and years, I always heard, well, weed is super fine. There's no problems with it. I think that we're now seeing. My wife is a nurse, and so I hear a lot of stories about people that come in and they've got issues and they didn't realize it was because of the weed, that they have stomach issues or they have kind of fogginess issues up in the brain or whatever. And some people don't realize that they can get habitually hooked on it, and that can cause problems, right, long term. And so I think that the other side of the pendulum is kind of swinging when it comes to marijuana, where people are going like, oh, there are issues with marijuana.
Mm-hmm.
For so many years, people were like, oh, well, it's totally fine. It's not addictive. It's not going to cause any problems. The reality of it is, though, is that everything can cause issues if not used in moderation, right? And so I think that that's kind of the thing, the takeaway here, right, is that you shouldn't have to have it every single day, and you don't have to with Kava.
And I think we're starting to come into a place within society where it's okay to say, I'm not drinking or I'm not doing any of this, and I need something that's going to help me relax, but also not be addictive. I think we're now reaching a place in society where it's okay to say that.
Yeah. It's
Well,
strange to me. I've always thought, I mean, I've never really been a drinker. I've never really, because of my religious background, I didn't really do any of that. And, whenever I went into like a comedy club or any sort of a club or bar or whatever, and they go, oh, well, it's like a 2-drink minimum. Well, if you only have Coke for me, that
yeah,
sucks.
yeah.
So maybe this is an alternative for someone out there. Maybe a bar owner who's like, maybe I should have something other than Coke for someone.
Mhm.
Drinking Coke all night long sucks.
It does. It does, and when you're the designated driver, or you're choosing to be dry, or you're, experimenting with dry January, or whatever you're doing, it doesn't allow you the opportunity to be very social because everybody first notices you're not having something.
Yeah.
And second, it's really hard to explain to people why you're not doing it. But I think bars and restaurants are starting to get a little bit better about being able to create some cocktails. But I do like the idea of not only mocktails, but other options. So I think that's important. And I think this is where it gets important to make the distinction, because I don't want this to sound like we're not calling Kava a miracle fix. It's not a miracle fix for
It's
every.
not.
So let's talk about what it is not. Would you want people to not assume about Kava? And I think first is, it's not the solution for every problem you have, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Man, look, shoot, so many people are looking for something to help them, and it's not a silver bullet, right? There's nothing is going to fix your problems. No substance is going to ever fix your problems. It doesn't matter what it is. The reality of it is that the root of your issues come from within, and a substance covering that up is not going to fix that. You cannot go to the doctor and get a pill and magically all of your anxiety is gone. That just does not work. And so that's why therapy is something that's important. When I get stressed out, yeah, I drink some coffee every once in a while. But you know what I really do? I go out on a walk. I go talk to my wife. I go play video games with my son. I bother my 14-year-old daughter. I do all the things that, I do outside of Kava because that is the stuff that is really going to help me deal with the stresses of daily life. A substance like Kava is not going to fix that. Anything that you get from the doctor is not going to fix that. It's all the things that you do outside of the substance that is going to actually help you improve your life.
Yeah. And I think that's important for people to understand that this is part of an entire picture. It's just one piece of the puzzle. It's not the one piece puzzle. It is a piece of a 1,000-piece puzzle. And you're right. I go for a walk. I do a lot of things to deal with whatever I'm having an issue with. But I think it's important to understand there isn't a miracle fix for anything. Have you seen people come in and they're expecting too much immediately after they try it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So earlier you mentioned what dose works best for newcomers or something. And I think that highlights a very interesting issue in our American society where we think that I have to have a dose of something in order to fix something, right? And in this case, that is it's just not how it is. Having a little pill or having a little dose of something is not gonna fix everything. And I think that it I don't know, it just really when you look at Kava and kind of how it acts and how you kind of chill out with it, it's not really intense. It's not something that's going to bowl you over. You're not, like I said earlier, you're not going to be on the ceiling. You're not going to be in space. And it's something that's going to be more subtle. Some people will say, well, I want to feel it stronger or I want to feel it for longer. Well, what are you trying to do? Like, are you trying to replace something that you are trying to get away from?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're just trying to recreate those same effects, it's not going to happen. And also, that's what got you into that place in the first place. So what are you looking for? Like, do you really want to stop whatever the issue is, or do you want to, find something else?
Yeah, find another addiction or something to mask whatever you're currently dealing with.
Yeah.
But as I looked through your site, I was amazed that there's not just one kava. There's all kinds of things. And it's not created equal, and I think beginners get confused really fast or overwhelmed. So, what are the differences between the two kavas that you noticed on your site, and what are they?
Yeah. So earlier I was talking about how kava is it's a canoe plant. It went from island to island and it changed, it morphed, right? Once it hit different soil compositions, it hit different weather patterns, different humidity levels, all that kind of stuff. It changed, right? So we have today over about 100 different varieties of what we call noble kavas.
Mm-hmm.
Noble kavas are something that you can drink every single day without any of those really long-term effects that are problematic. So there's a different type called 2-day, and 2-day kava literally is pigeon. It's a pigeon English for you feel it for 2 days.
Wow.
So it's kind of like a hangover, right? You drink
Mm-hmm.
it and you go, oh man, the next day you wake up and you're like, wow, I'm still feeling it. It's not really something that I like. It's not something that most Americans like. And it's actually kind of difficult to get here in the US because it was made illegal from places like Vanuatu to export it, unless the importer here in the US specifically asked for it. Now, is that actually being done? I don't know. I think it's it's third world countries trying to, create solutions for things that are, difficult to control. But those are the two main types. You got noble kavas and you have 2-day kavas. And then of all those different noble kavas, those 100 different varieties, you have ones in Vanuatu that are more sedative, that are more kind of a muscle relaxant, that help you kind of sink into the couch. And then as you travel eastward towards Hawaii, you get more euphoric effects. So places in like Tonga or Hawaii, that's going to be less sedative and more euphoric. But all kavas will make you a little bit tired. All kavas will make you feel pretty good.
So that goes into then the differences between things like heady or heavy or balanced, depending on what you are looking for it to do.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Are there better? So as I start to scroll through your site or walk into a place that sells it, is there something that I would keep in mind as I'm ordering, that if it's during the day and I'm not really ready to totally relax, I just want to have something to put me in a nice space, in versus what I would want at night before I go to bed, is which ones would I lean into?
Yeah. So if you're using something at night, or if you're using kava at night, I like to drink kava at about 10 o'clock at night. I drink a kava from Vanuatu. That will be much more relaxing. If I'm hanging out with a bunch of buddies, I'll drink a Tongan kava,
Okay.
something that's going to help me be, kind of a social lubricant. Tongans will drink it all night long together. They will literally, like one time I went to a party and I got there at like 6 or 7 o'clock at night, and they were drinking kava, and I left about 3 in the morning, and I texted my buddy the next morning at like 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning, and I go, "Hey man, that was a fun night. Thanks for inviting me." And he sent me a picture. He was still there drinking kava with his friends. He said, "Oh,
Wow.
we're about to go make some Navajo tacos. So, yeah, we're gonna, he just, so they like to drink it all night long. It's a very social thing for them. I can't handle that. I need some sleep.
I can't handle being up all night, but that's just my age, not necessarily other things. But
Maybe it's my age too. I don't know.
so as they start to walk into the site, you're going to want to make sure that you're picking the right one for where you're at in your day, so that you're keeping up with that. But you said something interesting. The types are more specific to where they're grown versus maybe branding. So when you start to look at the different kinds, it's more about where they're being sourced, right?
Yeah, yeah. So, I was talking about Tongans, how they're drinking it all night long. If you look at how they grew kava and how we continue to have Tongan kava today, you can tell that the farmers that have been farming kava for centuries, if not millennia, have been using a specific variety from Tonga because of the effects. There's a reason that they don't have more sedative kavas, and it's because they prefer the ones that aren't as sedative, right? Their culture prefers the ones that aren't as sedative. And it's the same in Hawaii. You get more and more euphoric as time went on. And so in Vanuatu, where they drink it in kind of community centers called nakamalls. And nakamalls, you're drinking 3 or 4 shells of kava, like coconut shells of kava, and it's very strong, but it's very relaxing. It's very sedative. It's very different than Tongan kava, where you're drinking a light kind of solution of this stuff that you're drinking for 12 hours. So it's a completely different style of drinking kava because of how that culture wants to drink kava. And that's the style of kava that they decided to grow because of their culture. So you can kind of relate that to your own life and go, well, what do I want out of it? Do I want something to hang out with my friends, or do I want something to wind down at the end of the night?
Yeah, that makes sense. And it sounds like you've have a lot of conversations, and you've traveled all through the South Pacific, and have had these meetings and these conversations. What have you learned outside of the different forms of kava? What else have you learned from that experience of traveling around and meeting all these growers?
Yeah, so I routinely will go down to the South Pacific at least once a year so that I can see what's going on there on the ground and understand the issues with the farmers and really figure out where the market is headed. Kava takes at least 3 to 5 years to grow. So, it's a long time before you're actually going to get some returns out of those fields. And those farmers need to understand the demand here in America 3 years in advance. Well, it's very difficult to do. So right now we're actually dealing with a little bit of a shortage because during COVID times, the demand was not as high, and farmers were not able to export as much because transport and freight was, at a standstill for a little bit. And so they thought, well, if I won't be able to sell this stuff, then why am I going to bother planting it, right? And so, that kind of stuff is important for me to go down and communicate with the folks down on the island and say, no, you got to keep planting, plant, because the demand here right now, it's highest I've ever seen it in the last 12 years. I've seen ebbs and flows in kava consumption, but right now it's extremely high. And so some of those things that I've learned though and actually it's funny that you bring this up. Next week I'm going to Fiji and I'm going to Tonga. And what I've learned from them is really about just general sort of life. We today in the U.S., we're so capitalistic, and we have this problem where we're always thinking about money, and they really just don't have that ailment. They, I went to a place in Vanuatu where this guy had a big giant field of kava, and I'd never met him before. He had so much kava, I've never seen anything like it before, and I was joking with him. I said, "Oh, can I buy all of your kava? It looks like a beautiful field here." And he looked at me dead in the eyes and he goes, "No." I thought, well, okay, that's crazy. If I was in like Iowa and I went up to like a soybean farmer and I was like, "Hey, I'd like to buy all of your soybeans," the farmer would be like, "Okay, well, here's how much it's going to cost and this is how it's going to work out," and blah, 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 blah. This guy in Vanuatu had no care. He did not care how much money I was going to offer him. He did not care. He didn't realize I was even joking. He was just like, "I'm not giving you my kava." And it's because they use it as like a savings account. They use it as like a bank account that they can go,
Oh,
"Okay, well, I need to pay for my son's school tuition, or I'm going to build a building for my family. I'm going to build like a house for my family. I gotta buy concrete maybe."
mhm.
But that's about it. They're really subsistence farmers. They have cassava and taro in their backyard. They've got a couple pigs in the backyard. And outside of school and building materials, they don't really use a whole lot of money. They
Right.
don't really need it. They don't really want it. And so he had no interest in just accruing money to accrue money. He
Mhm.
just was like, "That's just not my sort of thing." Now, how we can actually use that in our lives, I'm still grasping for that because we need money.
Yeah.
I don't have a garden. I don't have pigs. I don't know about you, but I
Mm-mm.
could not survive
Nope.
without money right now.
Nope.
And it would take me years and years to do it. But their mindset is so much healthier because they're not chasing this invisible or imaginary number that, we can't. I don't know. It just seems like a maybe a better way of doing it.
Yeah, I agree. There's people out there that they've got it figured out, and you just want to follow them and say, okay, just through osmosis, can I just pick up what you've figured out? You said something interesting. In the last 12 years, you're seeing demand at its highest right now for kava. Do you know why? Is it because we're all trying to get off the hamster wheel, or do you have any ideas as to why it's so high?
Well, uh, look, I'm a millennial. I've been told over and over again my entire life that my generation is killing every industry, and we're apparently killing the alcohol industry as well, which I'm fine with. And so I think that's a part of it. I think that people are trying to get away from that. Because my generation is also getting older. I'm almost 40. That's kind of where I feel like so many people kind of get out of that early, you know 20s lifestyle, 20s and early 30s lifestyle of drinking every night or every couple of nights, and we just start to slow down a little bit, and we have families and we have responsibilities, and generations younger than us, Generation Z, they're much more into marijuana than alcohol. You look at any of these studies, and drinking is down across all generations. It's not as cool to drink anymore. So I think that that's one of the main reasons why. And people just want something else. So they don't want to screw over their life, right? Everyone has had my grandfather was an alcoholic, right? I had a cousin that OD'd. We've experienced these things all collectively, and we just don't want to continue doing that if we don't have to.
No, I get it. And I can start to see the impact of people as a society starting to make different decisions, better decisions. You're seeing a lot of distilleries and wineries, and a lot of them are trying to retrench into, okay, we're beyond the explosion we had during COVID, and how do we regroup and address the current demand? But the other thing that I found interesting as you were starting to talk about your travels to South Pacific is you're meeting with the growers, you're talking with them. And it sounds like you're really walking into their space and making sure that it's ethical sourcing. And why is that so important to you and your company that this kava is ethically sourced?
Look, we we've had we've had years and years and years of people for so long that have discussed all these ideas about being good people. Well, what does that really mean, right? Like, you go to therapy and you're like, well, I want to be a good person. I don't like it how someone else treated me poorly, right? They shouldn't have treated me poorly, but what about us, right? Like, what's that deal? One of the biggest things that any therapist will tell you about improving your life is about serving others. It's about like looking at how other people are living and how you can help them, right? When you help other people, you feel better yourself.
Mhm.
I think that every religious figure ever has also taught that. They've always said, hey, look, when you help your fellow man, you're going to feel better and you're going to be doing good things, and that's good. So that's the heart of it, is that I think that you should treat other people kindly. I think that you should treat other people fairly. And I think that if you're going to have a long-term relationship with someone, like the farmers that we've been working with, I've been working with these farmers, well, Mike and I have, for the last 10, 12 years.
Mhm.
You can't have those relationships without treating them properly. You,
Right.
you can't do it.
Right.
And so you have to be an ethical person. You have to have morals. You have to stand your ground, and you have to say, look, my product might be more expensive than others. And the reason for it is because I'm actually paying people properly. So to me, that's why it's so important.
Yeah, and I think that's important to a lot of people as they start to move out of box stores and just buying whatever's on a shelf. They're really starting to dig into, where is this sourced? Who's getting paid? Who am I supporting when I buy this? And I think it's getting much more important for people as they start to make those decisions where they put their hard earned dollars. So, as I was scrolling through your site, you have a where to start quiz, which I found interesting. But I'm curious about, let's explore a little bit more into that beginning advice and that beginner advice. If somebody's kava curious, but they're totally overwhelmed, where should they start?
I would start with a sampler pack. I would
Yeah.
say that you can't have one kava and then think that you know all about kava. You have to have different types of kava. It'd be kind of like saying, if you tried coffee once, would you know anything about it? Would you actually know whether it was good or not? Oh, you had a cup of Folgers?
No.
That's what I'm saying,
No.
right? So you just there's different types of coffee. It comes from different areas of the world.
Mhm.
They process it differently. They might wash it. They might not. They might ferment it differently. They might roast it differently. And all of those variables play into the full effect and taste and texture of coffee. Same thing with kava.
Okay.
So in kava, if you try one kava, rest assured it will be very different from another one. An example of that is that in Vanuatu, they take the whole kava plant and
Hmm.
they will peel very little of it, the bark of it on the outside. And the bark is where it's very bitter. Kava actually means bitter in Tongan, by the way. But in Vanuatu, they'll take that bark and they'll kind of mix it into the kava, and it creates a darker kava, but it's also stronger. It's stronger in effect, but also in flavor.
Okay.
In Tonga, they will peel everything. And that peeling makes it a very light kava, and a very, like, the
Mhm.
flavor is much more mellow. And the effects are not as, in your face. They don't really punch your mouth. They're just kind of there. And so, it's just different styles of drinking kava. Some want to have something really quick and easy, and some want to let it kind of ride for a little bit for a little while. And Tongan kava is something where it's just very mellow and mild and easy to drink. So a lot of newbies might want to try Tongan kava first.
And so they could take, obviously, we're going to direct them to your site, Kalm, but if I'm walking into a kava bar, I can take the knowledge. So if I order from your site, Calm with Kava, and I have a favorite, is do they is what you sell on your site easily translatable? Speaking of coffee, so if I like an espresso coffee, I sort of know what I'm ordering when I walk into a coffee shop because
Mhm.
I know what I like. And it's not Folgers, by the way. But is it easily translatable if I start with your product to then go into a kava bar and go, okay, I know what I like. This is going to be easy to order?
Yeah, generally in a kava bar, you'll have three different varieties of kava. That's how it generally is. You'll have a Vanuatu variety of kava, you'll have a Fijian type of kava, and then you'll have a Tongan kava. And Vanuatu's more sedative, Tongan are more euphoric, and Fijian is kind of right in the middle. It's like a
Okay.
little bit of a mix of both of them. And so, yes, you can absolutely walk into a kava bar and have kind of. Now, the only thing that I'll say might be a caveat there is that certain kava bars will mix it in ratios that's different than you might at home, right?
Okay.
So, same thing with coffee, right? You maybe
Mhm.
you like a really strong cup of coffee and you would use more grounds than a coffee shop, maybe. I don't know. But that is definitely how it is with a kava bar, right? I
Okay.
mean, some kava bars, they might want to get a little bit more bang for their buck and increase their margins. So they might use a little bit less kava.
Awesome. So if anybody has any questions, let me know if you're watching live. But I think before I let you go, I want to end up with a few fun questions so that people can get to know a little bit more of you outside of your CEO hat. But it's still going to be related, I think. What is one thing about Kava that you never get tired of teaching people?
The culture and the people. I love going down to the islands and meeting them and understanding how they operate and why they're different. Right. Everyone loves Hawaii, but what they don't realize is that when they go to Hawaii and they go sit on a beach, that's not Hawaii. Hawaii is the people. It's the culture. It's what they've been doing for 1,000 years in the Hawaiian Islands. It's the history there, and that's what I love to talk about. I specifically love that when you look at kava.
Mhm.
So kava, the plant, because it's required human intervention for 3,000 years, you can really look at that and trace how people migrated throughout the islands for 3,000 years.
Oh, that's cool.
We know where they came from because of kava. We can actually see through DNA that there were most of the time, the kava migrated east, and but there are some times where it migrated west.
Ooh.
So we can see things like where wars happened. Tonga for a little while was, going into Fiji and destroying their kind of world for a little bit. And you have also linguistic patterns that are evident there as well, because you can see where certain cultures kind of came in and decided that they were going to, stake their claim on those islands and destroy an entire island of people and plant their crops. And now you have different DNA of plants that you can see as it migrated. So I also love just the general idea that like kava is the thing that has really laid the foundation for a lot of these cultures. If you think about like if you are with your family and you are wanting to go to a different island or you're wanting to just leave, you're done with this island for whatever reason.
Right.
Maybe you don't like the people. Maybe you put your explorer hat on. You're like, I'm going to go find something new out there. Whatever it is, you're going to load up your canoe with the most important things that you have. You're going to load it up with all your food, with all your medicines, with all of the, things that you need to survive, and not just survive on the voyage, but the things that you need to survive on the new island where you're going to have to plant food and you're going to have to make sure that you survive with your family. One of those things was kava. That's how important it was. That's how foundational kava was to all of those cultures. So, I think that to me, my favorite thing to explain to people is how that is so important. And most people don't think about it. They think about like a banana or a coconut or a taro or a cassava. They never talk about kava, but kava was one of those things that was super important to them.
That is amazing. And I just never really made that connection to the culture and all of that. So it sounds like, I mean, you just lit up as you were telling me the story. So, what is the one question you wish people would ask that they don't normally ask?
That's a good question. Hmm. A question that they don't normally ask. Normally, people will sit and talk to me for like a half hour about it once they find out that, I own a farm in Hawaii. Uh, I would say, like, I don't even know.
Sorry,
Uh,
didn't mean to stump you.
No, that's okay. That's a really crazy, good question. Uh, okay, I'll tell you what it is.
Okay.
Most people, they don't really think about, when you think about coffee, have you ever seen a coffee plant?
Hmm.
So I think that you are in the minority. I think that a lot of people have no idea what a coffee plant looks like. The other day I looked up, I was making a meal, and I made something with sesame seeds, and I thought, where does sesame seeds even come from? What does that even look
Yeah.
like? It turns out it's a little pod. It's a little green pod. It kind of looks like okra or something like that. And you let it kind of, sit for a little while, and it ends up, being filled with sesame seeds. Well, what does kava look like? Right? Like, how does that, and why is that important? Well, to me, I look at a kava plant and I see stems. You can tell the different types of kava based on how it looks, the physical characteristics of it. Some are green, some are brown, some are purple, some are more black. Some of them have spots all around. Some of them have no spots. Some of them have long stems, and some have really short stems. And all of that kind of plays into the whole, like, well, what type of kava are you drinking?
Okay.
And why is that important? Right. So to me, I love to talk about the botany of kava. I love to talk about, like, why we know certain types of, like, I had a really cool experience a couple months ago on our farm in Hawaii. We have a variety called Nene. And nene is a variety of kava that for a long time was used by mothers to give to their kids as a way to get them to calm down if they're like a colicky baby, or if they have like teeth that are, or if they're teething, they would give them some kava to chew on it that numbs your gums. Well, I sent a picture of nene to our Tongan farmer, and she goes, "Oh, that looks like," and then it was this other type that I can't remember the name of because it's like 16 letters long, but it looks like the exact same kava. And so, the physical characteristic of what that kava looks like may very well, show that it is the exact same kava from,
Oh,
another culture, which I had never quite thought of before. And so actually I'm going to be going to Tonga soon, and I'm going to be getting a sample of that so I can get it lab tested to see if it actually is the same kava.
that's cool.
But so I guess I would want people to ask me about the plant itself, because I think it's super cool and it's very mystical.
Yeah, that is, yeah, you don't even think about there's probably just traces of DNA that you can trace back and say, I'll bet you that this came from there. And then we can do that whole hereditary, how did it travel? Where did it end up? Yeah, that's a fascinating story because then you could really wrap the whole culture around where it went and traveled in its iterations.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you have a cup at about 10 o'clock. Is that still currently your wind down routine?
Yeah. 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 So most nights, about 9:30, 10 o'clock, I'll make my kava, and, the house is quiet. The kids are in bed. My wife is watching some show that I would rather not watch. And I got some time to myself, and so I'll make my kava, and I can kind of take that 5 minutes and think about what's gone on through the day, and what I need to accomplish tomorrow, what went well, what didn't go well, and, use that time to re-index my brain a little bit. And then once I'm done with that, I can drink my kava in peace, knowing that I've already kind of thought about all the big things. And yeah, that's my nightly kind of ritual.
Yeah, my husband would agree with you. I watch things he could care less about. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just that's the way marriage works. So, I'm going to have you put your CEO hat back on. So, tell me what you're most excited about right now with Calm with Kava.
Yeah, so the farm in Hawaii, we finally, it's called Puiva Farms Hawaii, and so, Mike's original 100 plants, now we've turned it into 15,000, and we finally, this month we're going to start to harvest. We've never harvested plants at this scale before, and so we're going to be able to actually have fresh frozen Hawaiian ava. In Hawaiian, they call it ava instead of kava. It's one of those linguistic things we were talking about earlier that you can kind of trace back. And so we're going to have fresh frozen Hawaiian ava, which is not common. And it's the closest thing you can get to, pulling it out of the ground yourself. Most of the time, kava is dried. And so you have dried kava. It's just a lot more bitter and earthy in flavor. Fresh kava tastes more like a cucumber water, but a little bit more medicinal and earthy. But it's better. and it feels better. The effects are cleaner, and the taste is better. It's just a really great product overall. So that's what I'm most excited about.
That's awesome. And for those of you who have not had a chance to check out the website, it is Kalm with Kava, and that's Kalm with a K. And
Yep.
there is so much information over there. There's Kava 101. There is a quiz you can take to try and find your kind. But as Morgan mentioned, you're really going to want to get that sampler pack, because one is just not going to be the right one depending on your mood and your day. So, Morgan, as we wrap up, what is one thing you want everybody else to know that we have not covered, or that you want to make sure people know?
I just want people to know that there are alternatives to the things that our family members have always used, right? My ancestry goes back to different islands, the British islands, and they were distilling whiskey and all sorts of things over there, and that didn't really do a whole lot of good for the world. It ruined families. It really kind of changed the course of a lot of people's lives. And I think that if you're looking for something else, if you're looking for something different than what you've always been consuming, maybe try something else. It doesn't have to be kava, right? It could be literally anything else. But just if you're thinking that there's something wrong in your life and you want to change things up a little bit, I think now's the time.
I would agree. Well, thank you so much. This has been an absolutely fun conversation. I came into it genuinely curious because I knew nothing. And I think there's a lot of people who have listened and checked in periodically that came in with that same impression. I'm curious, but it's one of those things where I'm not 100% sure. You can hear my dog barking. What to order, and I don't want to be that person standing in line that's going to ask the stupid question. But I think you gave us the information that we need to be able to make an informed choice wherever we are, either your website, Kalm with Kava, or at a Kava bar. But I do appreciate your time today. And our conversation obviously wasn't just about the product. It was, we delved into the culture and the society and the history and, of course, the botany of that plant. And it's got me now wanting to go back and do a little bit more research, and so I can learn a little bit more. I am a coffee aficionado, so I truly like to explore coffee from different areas and regions. So this seems to have sparked something in me as well. So thank you so much for being here and for helping me and all of those that are watching get a little bit more familiar with the world of kava. And if you're watching or listening on the podcast, make sure you check out Kalm with Kava. That's a Kalm with a K, kalmwithkava.com, and see what all that Morgan has over there on that site. I'm telling you, you are going to be there a while because you're going to want to learn everything. Morgan, thank you so much.
Thank you, Michelle. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Huge thanks to Morgan with Kalm with Kava for hanging out and spilling all the tea, literally, on this 3,000-year-old South Pacific secret. From the mouth-numbing magic, and yes, it's supposed to do that, we learned that, to discovering how to chill out without the dreaded next day hangover. I am officially obsessed. If you're Kava curious and want to test the waters yourself, head over to kalmwithkava.com, and that's Kalm with a K, and grab their sampler pack. Before you go melt into that couch, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any episodes. We've got more fascinating guests and deep dives coming your way. Until next time, stay chill, stay curious, and happy sipping.